Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And today, our podcast guest is Stephen Christian. Stephen Christian is a creator, writer, and animator based in Reno, Nevada. He has a background in sports and earned a Master of Arts from Oregon State, where he focused on visual representation of social justice issues through animation and illustration. Stephen is passionate about using his skills to give back to his community as a teaching artist and mentor, and through working with various nonprofit organizations. Stephen's work includes the Eyelnd Feevr Augmented Reality immersive storytelling experience. This style also was featured in the Wall Street Journal and Unity for Humanity, Unity Learn, and Augmented World Expo, AWE. So Stephen is also an ND PhD candidate in integrative neuroscience at the University of Nevada, Reno, a Unity certified instructor, a Unity certified 3D artist, and an AR/VR instructor at Portland Community College. He offers consulting services in AR/VR and XR project development, and he is skilled at exploring the intersections of art, technology, and project development. So yeah, thank you, Stephen, to join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. Yeah. So today, what we are going to discuss is first, we can talk about your background and also what do you foresee this kind of intersection between medical biology, AR, VR, and technology and education. And at the end, tell us what you're up to, right? Right now, you are a medical school student, and also you are a teacher, and also you are trying to publish or push this to types of shows, TV shows. So yeah, tell us like all of them. Yeah. So first question, how has your background in medicine and biology influenced your approach to your projects in XR, AR, and storytelling?
It's the intersections of like medicine and technology and all that. It's been a very interesting journey. Part of it is because like throughout my journey, like trying to get into medical school and trying to pursue the sciences, but also pursue like the art and the tech, uh, they're often running into conflict, and not because it's like the subject matter is conflicting, but because the people that like navigate those spaces don't really get it. They don't understand, or they don't get like the connections between the two. And so the best way I could describe it is like, when I'm studying for like my medical board exams or for medical school and all that, there's processes and procedures that happen within the human body that are akin to storytelling, right? There's a beginning, a middle, and an end for any pathology or any physiology, and or any drug that gets used, right? And so for me, the way I remember these things are quite literally just telling stories about those things, right? But at face value, if we were to talk to the average healthcare professional, they think that the storytelling aspect is lost in the field of medicine and those hard sciences. And so as I like progress, a lot of my frustrations with the lack of relevant cultural relevance within the hard sciences and particularly medicine, I find that as an artist that really shines because it really helps me to have a better connection with the subject material. And so quite literally, it like me doing all the art and like the AR, VR, and the technology stuff, that's really just to like help me balance out my life and navigate my stress that comes from medicine. But because I have that experience and that expertise, I'm able to have a deeper connection to the subject matter that I'm studying because I can integrate my art and my storytelling and my XR stuff into it to create more connections for me, and then I can share it with other people, and then they like it, right? So I think both of them, it's a very synergistic sort of relationship between the two that I didn't really expect when I got into medical school. And so it just, I think I'm still figuring it out as I go. And so
Yeah.
when I figure it out, I'll let you guys know.
That's very cool. So, do you have any examples that, for example, you use AR, VR for your like a exam or any presentation at your medical school? Like, how do you kind of like integrate those two skills?
Oh yeah, yeah. So uh I take pride at my school as like the medical student, like in the whole school that makes the best presentations. Like hands down, everybody wants to be in my group because I make the best presentations, right? It gives me
Wow.
an opportunity to animate. It gives me an opportunity to communicate ideas that are easy to do visually and hard to do, outside of like the visual space, right? So I think that's where like, my sort of interests and my skills outside of medicine really, really shine. When it comes to testing, every test is a multiple choice test, so they're kind of like the bane of my existence. And so, for me at least, it's utilizing, my strengths to better prepare me for a standardized exam, and being able to help navigate just the swaths of information and being able to visualize those things. In the middle of an 8 hour exam where I have to do that, 200 times, and so it's just, it's just lowering the barrier of entry for me to just like do well in the stuff. But for the most part, I mean, I would say, uh, one of like one of my favorite one of my favorite projects that I did was, I created an AR experience that uh that visualizes how the circulatory system works with the heart. And so, going from, the body, or having blood go from the body to, the right ventricle, or right atrium, then the right ventricle, then to the lungs through the pulmonary system, and then coming back to the heart through the left atrium and then the left ventricle, and then going out into the body through the aortic system, right? And so being able to visualize that and breaking it down into different pieces, and then putting that into a space, by virtue of augmented reality, so that you have the opportunity to explore, what those series of events are in a way that provides with more depth. It's, implementing spatial design into, you know understanding the circulatory system, and so creating stuff
So,
like that is really fun.
so what's your studies like a focus in medical school? For example, like the entire body surgeon, like a, what's your focus, or it's more like a general study for
Yeah,
now?
yeah. So every medical student learns the same thing. They learn, like, I wouldn't say the exact same thing, but like every medical student, regardless of what school you go to, if you're in an MD program, I can't speak for DOs or like international students, but American MD programs, everybody learns the same thing with the variation of the same curriculum. And so I would akin it to like, how uh, medical school is like general medical education. And then when you graduate from medical school and you get into a residency program, then that's when you technically get to major in something. Like you get to actually major in like your interested like field of study, and that's a whole nother beast that has like match day and all that. And so for the most part, like I am, just learning just general medicine, how to just be a regular physician, right? And then my PhD is in integrative neuroscience. So I'm like kind of like specializing without specializing at this point. And so I'm like leaning towards something, but like, me getting a PhD in integrative neuroscience doesn't stop me from pursuing, surgery, or it doesn't stop me from pursuing, being a pathologist, um, or a pulmonologist, or, somebody that only wants to deal with kidneys, right? And so, for the most part, those are like two different tracks that are running in parallel. And I have an opportunity as a physician to like integrate them however I want. But the same could be said for like all the, the art and the technology stuff that I do as well.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you use like augmented reality like inside your medical school, like for group presentation and visualize all the interesting part in for your medical school studies. And for in your view, what will you see that the medical school or doctors can utilize storytelling and AR? The skills that you have as well to improve or to help them kind of do their job better.
I wouldn't say that like it would help them do their job better. I would say that uh, medicine in and of itself is what they call like patient centered.
Mm.
And in layman's terms, it's just like medicine. The core like medicine means nothing without the people, right?
Oh,
And
yes.
so you need people to run it, you need people to serve. It's all centered around people. And one of the biggest hindrances in medicine is being able to communicate complex things that are happening to them and making it
Mm,
relevant to the people that you're supposed to be serving, right?
mm,
Medical healthcare professionals go to school. I could speak for medical students, right? So, like medical
mm,
students that become physicians, they go to school for, 4 years of undergrad. If they
mm,
do a post back like me, it'll be another X amount of years. And then they go to medical school for another 4 years. And then they do their residency for another 3 to 4 years. And so, all that training, right? Like you're spending, you know, 12 to 15 years just in trying to prepare to like work with people, right? And so
mm.
how do you take all of that 12 to 15 years worth of science and education and then communicate that to somebody in a 10-minute visit that
Wow.
they have no background in any of that stuff, right? And so a lot of the training that we get and a lot of my interest with utilizing art and technology is to lower the barrier, like lower the possibilities of miscommunication between a patient and their physician, and making it easier to communicate complex ideas in a small amount of time, right? And
Mm,
I always akin it to like, every time a Pixar movie comes out, it
mm,
takes some years to sort of figure out how to tell that story of
mm.
something complex. But within that 2 hour period that you watch the movie, everything that you see, you get, and you get it immediately because it's quote unquote culturally relevant, right?
Mm.
And they spend a lot of time trying to make those complex ideas about the human condition really, really digestible. Like a TikTok video, right?
Mm.
Like you see a TikTok video and in 20 seconds you get it, right? And I think there is an avenue for people to explore that with AR and VR within the field of medicine, and mainly because it's just a lot to it's very stressful to try to understand this stuff for to have competency in it, and then it's frustrating when you finally get it and then you can't communicate it with somebody that hasn't gone through that journey that you've gone. And so in many ways it's the biggest ways are for healthcare professionals to utilize it to better communicate to the patients that they're serving, and then hopefully those patients are able to have a deeper connection with the information that they have to better understand and have more agency over their health, and that in turn improves people's health quality, right? They're less likely to do things at their detriment if they know exactly what they're doing and what effect it has. And if you could do that in the smallest amount of time and compel them to want to learn more about it by virtue of doing more AR experiences or watching more videos or whatever, and not having to be solely reliant on the physician to sort of figure all the stuff out, then it works out it works out in the end. Do I think that AR and VR will at scale like help help people freaking like do better on their exams and stuff like that? That's to be determined because they're just the resources in general just aren't that great. relative to just like reading a book. And so for the most part, like all the rest of the stuff is to be determined, but like communication and like connections with people is really like one of the things that I think will have like the biggest impact with the integration of the technology.
So I can summarize it. You're saying that for physicians to communicate with patient, like within 10 minutes, types of like a visit, and the physician will be able to communicate the complex ideas to make it very simple and make it visualize for patient to understand. Less about the studies for medical school students, probably because maybe reading a book is much easier to understand, or it requires even more complex types of design animation for people to kind of get it within like a 10 minutes, more better narrative or scripting, or take much more effort just to make it a medical types of like a education materials, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's like at least from like my experience, right? Like
Mm.
uh reading a book, like reading a book about this stuff sucks. Like it just it sucks. Like it's bad. Not to say that reading is bad, but just the way the information is presented. In order for you to remember all the stuff that you need to know, you kind of have to read the book like 7 times just
Wow.
to like get a lot of it stick, right?
Mm.
But if you were to compare that to like your favorite videos that you watch or just videos that you watch in general,
Mm.
um, you you can watch the video 2 times and remember more than reading it 7 times, right? So just from the average user perspective, right? It's a lot more efficient to you know put more resources into something that takes you the least amount of time to utilize versus something that you have to utilize more times and still not get a good return out of it. And so yes, the barrier of entry like animation to animate stuff takes longer and all that, but the goal is to just make that stuff a little more accessible, because the data supports that like more visual representations and more immersive experiences are better in general. And in this area, it's just underutilized just because I don't think people get it. And it's not their fault. It's just, I'm fortunate enough I've been an animator for 10 years. I understand, right? Because I've worked in the space. There's a lot of people that haven't. And so, I think I'm fortunate to have those insights going into medicine to say, hey, maybe we should do this because this works in these areas. This is the payoff, something that's a little more high stakes, like, somebody's life, I think this will be a benefit to it, right? You just kind of go from there.
Cool. Yeah. So I remember a long time ago, I saw there was a kind of like a 3D simulation for eye doctor. I know eye doctor, there's a professional term, but I forgot how to call it. Let's just call it eye doctor. And
Yeah.
it seems like eye, there are a lot of nerves and it will overlay each other. So by looking at 3D instead of 2D images, it will be much easier. So it's also easier for a student to study. And today I just saw one of Sam Altman's Twitter or X tweet. He said that movies are going to become video games, and video games are going to become something unimaginably better. What do you see about this? Because you mentioned that you use augmented reality. Do you gamify your study or gamify this to explain to patient, or you think gamify is kind of an additional interaction that can be either added on or remove it, like gamification in medical field? What do you see the statement? And also, yeah, I mean, I recently saw Netflix as beta version of putting a lot of games inside
Yeah.
Netflix thing. So yeah, what do you see about this move? Yeah.
I wouldn't say that like gamification is I don't think that like gamification like on a has really like a scalable solution within like medicine, and partly because that takes a lot of time to like, you sort of have to have people buy in, and you have to have game logic, and you have to have risk and reward systems and all that within in order for it to be relevant for people. I think for me, I sort of look at it from the approach of making things a lot more immersive, and so appealing to as many sort of like human senses as possible, right? So like if most people just get their information from reading, then and that's a visual sense, and it could be a tactile experience as well, by integrating sound, by integrating moving images, by integrating 3D models instead of only relying on 2D images, and then providing interaction points for people to interact with that content without any risk or reward associated with it. I think there's a lot that you could do with that. And I think the the technical limitations are a lot less, because there's not as many variables relative to a game that you have to integrate. And so and by virtue of that, you don't have to give somebody a manual to learn how to use the stuff. You just say, hey, move this slider, if you want to rotate this, right? Like press this button if you want to hear sound, right? Like, and so doing those little things go a long way, because like it just doesn't exist. In terms of like trying to like make everything a Ready Player One experience and all that, like, I mean, like there's no infrastructure to support that. And so maybe, when the Vision Pro 37 comes out, like we will have that. But at this point now, it's like most everybody is using just a smartphone. Most everybody really, I mean, like all of our, the way we interact with digital stuff is through a smartphone. So creating solutions that allow for that to be possible, and making it easy to do by like using just basic user inputs, and and then kind of going from there. Like, I would say the furthest I would go is like providing a save system or a login screen. That's probably as far as I would go in terms of like gamifying something. It just like But just simple user inputs to dive deeper and explore the information about yourself or whatever it is. That's where I see it going. But I think I'm fortunate. I think that the way I see it is definitely informed by just like talking to real patients and being in actual doctors' offices and seeing how things work already. Is like, a lot of people have these ideas of like, oh yeah, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. Yeah, you can, but it's really hard to continue doing that when you have to see 30 patients a day. Like
Oh,
it just doesn't like people just don't have the capacity to do it. And so
yeah.
and
I
so it's like it just it just it and so there's a lot of, when it comes to people having sort of opinions and sort of speaking things into the world, it's like, yeah, those ideas sound great, but who's going to do that? Like, if they're not going to do it, then it's not going to go very far.
Yeah, so just like a recap, you mentioned that for gamification in explain to patient or the medical education, the scalable aspects is probably the issue because it's just require a huge scale of work and the sophisticated types of game mechanics being implemented. And do you think that because I saw Sam Altman's tweet, movies are going to become video games and video games are going to become something unimaginable better. But sometimes we just wanna sit on the couch and doesn't wanna even touch anything. And I can tell you, I play Netflix, like one of the beta game, and I feel stuck. I just wanna passively watching something moving
Yeah,
through instead of like, oh gosh, like which button I need to use. And now it's keyboard and it's just like, oh, in order to trigger the next one, I have to figure it out and explore a game. And I was like, I just give up. So
yeah.
what do you see this statement? Yeah.
I think that not everybody wants to do it. Like, I don't want to work for my movie. Like, I don't want to have to put forth like me watching a movie requires me to get in my car or choose whatever movie I want to watch, and then sitting on the couch, making sure I'm connected to the internet or whatever, and then watching the movie, right? Like that is, if when it comes to movies, that's all I have the capacity to do. That's all I want to do, right? I want to see, I'm a big action movie fan. And so I want to see like explosions. I want to see, fight scenes. I want to hear quirky jokes. If it has a complex story, cool. But like, I just want to be entertained without
Mm,
putting forth any effort than I already have to. And then, and on the flip side, right? Like there's games that I love. Like I'm a big action, game fan. Like I love Devil May Cry, things with like a whole bunch of combos and stuff like that. I'm a big button masher type of person, right? But those occupy different levels of experiences that I want to be entertained by, right?
mm,
After studying for 10 hours, I do not want to play a video game. Like it just like I just don't. Like I just don't have the energy to. But I'll watch a 2-hour movie, right? And so if the future of movies is to be more like video games, then I don't see the future of movies really lasting any further than it's already lasting right now. And what would I say that like, video games will have, movie caliber storylines and movie caliber talent involved in it? Yeah, but to say that, movies and video games will sort of, combine or, like overlap in more ways than they're already doing now, I just don't see that. If anything, more movies will be utilizing game engines for the rendering process, so that's about it, right? I could see choose your own adventures like stories for movies, and that would be something that would be interesting, but it wouldn't come at the expense of how movies are now. It would just be like an added thing that
mm.
like bridges the gaps. But choose your own adventure stories have been around for like since the inception of visual media anyway. And so it's just an evolution of that. And not really too much of bridging the gaps between the other two.
Yeah, so according to your point, that movie is what well still existing, which kind of symbolize more like a passive entertainment.
Yeah.
But maybe the tools, for example, like using Unreal Engine to rendering a movie, and I
Mhm.
saw there are a lot of like I would more like a meta human and become the new actor actress, even though it's like a little uncanny valley types of things, looks a little
Yeah.
bit weird, but I mean, in the future, probably I saw one of J-Lo's types of commercial which using AI to do things. So yeah, I think those types of like entertainment, it will be still the passive entertain will still
Yeah.
continue. It's just the tools that will be changed. So yeah, so as for training education, what do you see that XR, AR, AI to facilitate it? And also, how's your pipeline? Before you mentioned, before our talk, before the LinkedIn Live, we mentioned Invoke. What do you see those like AI pipeline get into your workflow and help you to achieve your work better?
Yeah. I would say that like I don't foresee AI ever replacing anything. uh More like it's more of just like it helps you with like saving time with things, right? So like the process for me, at least the process for creating something is pretty standardized across all the work that I do, right? Like I pretty much work within a word editor, and I come up with an idea. If I can articulate it from just the idea that I have in my head onto paper, then it's something that I'm able to pursue. And then from there, if it's a comic book or whatever, I'm going to write the script. After I write the script, I'm going to sketch out the panels. And then after I sketch out the panels, I ink everything and just like visually render all this stuff. If I want to make it an AR comic, then I essentially take those things and I animate it. I code all this stuff in Unity and just sort of put it all together to make an immersive experience, right? And so all that stuff is still the same process. It's just that the time it takes for each one of those, for me to hit one of those milestones, is variant depending on the time that I have available, right? And so that could range from a couple of months to a whole year, right? And so with AI, all I'm doing is taking that same process that I just spoke about, and through AI, I can minimize the time it takes for me to render something out. I can minimize the time it takes for me to, create a 3D model to animate something, right? But it doesn't replace the effort that I need to put into it. It's just that, like, I have limited budget, so I, instead of me having to hire somebody, I could, utilize, an AI tool to, do what I would normally do myself, and just cut the time to get the finished product. At the end of the day, like, it's, it's an assistant. It's an assistant, right? And it's an assistant very much like how, most most like social media, like, managers and stuff like that use like Sprout Social, or like those like assistive like auto posting tools, so that they don't have to manually post every single thing on every platform. That's pretty much how AI is today, right? Like, it's just supposed to help you with the process that you have. And so, as it pertains to, a lot of stuff that I'm doing in XR, whatever, there really aren't any like XR, you know, AI tools that like I would use. If anything, it just would help me with, like, knowing how to code something, or helping me with documentation to figure stuff out. But at the end of the day, it's just me just like still working, right? I mentioned like Invoke AI, and Invoke AI is just something I would describe Invoke AI is, when you have like a blank canvas in Photoshop, and you want to utilize, you don't want to sit there and render something out uh, with, the paint tools of Photoshop for 12 hours. You could use Invoke AI to help you with the rendering process, so that what would normally take you 12 hours to do, with Invoke AI, you could utilize it and it would only take you maybe 1 to 2 hours. Right. So that you're gaining 10 hours back in your day that you otherwise wouldn't have, and you end up with a comparable finished product at the end, right? And so, don't get me wrong, like, you still have to put the effort and the work into it, right? Like, it requires a skill set to do that, right? Like, I I would do that regardless. I just don't have to spend 12 hours doing it, right? And that's what AI, that's the power of AI, at least in the world that I operate, right? And I think, with as it pertains to like medical training and all that stuff, instead of having to read 50 journals just to come to a conclusion, you could use AI to, parse those down into the overlapping points, so that you could come to that conclusion a lot faster, right? So maybe instead of having to read 50 journals, maybe you only need to read, 5 journals, and those 5 journals gives you a basic idea of it, and then you're using an AI model to parse down all the information, so that, there's a conclusion that you could walk from it, that you have insights to go back into your research or your practice, right? And so it's really just saving time. That's it. Like, everything else, if they're saying it's going to replace these things, there's no data to support that. Like, it just, like, it helps you save time. And time is very valuable in within medicine and within entertainment, in tech. Like, time is just very valuable. And so if people don't believe that, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Like, you know, like generative AI in and of itself kind of sucks. Like, it just, like, doing a text to, generate things, and then thinking that you're going to use that, in a production, is just not realistic. Like, nobody's doing that. It's just the artists that have the skills that you would normally pay anyway to make the stuff. They can use the tools to save themselves time and iterate faster in that small amount of time, and being able to iterate faster and have different variations, or having the project evolve uh, in a small amount of time, it just lends for just a better product overall. So it's yeah.
Yeah, and we also have a huge audience that is like in college, and also like for example, UX UI designer, and also developers who want to break into XR or AR VR field, AI field. Yeah, and right now, the layoff thing, right?
Yeah.
So the job situation is not promising, and you also teach in college. What's your advice, or what types of skill set that the future generation need to have?
I would say you so there's this so there's two paths that you could kind of go through, right? If you're looking for like something in like the XR space, you're you're essentially building up a skill set for a market that that requires you to sort of be a generalist. And a generalist is, I would akin that to being like a creative director, right? So like you develop all the skills that you have to uh to to successfully create the project overall. You're responsible for the animation, the audio, the design, all of those things that go into the project. You're responsible for all that, and all of those require a specific skill set, right? If you're trying to get onto like in the games industry as like a AAA developer or whatever, you would want to specialize in one of those things and really really have that shine through. Is like that's the only thing you're going to be doing, but it does corner you in terms of like being hyper specific or more generalistic. And the opportunities for that are, more generalistic means you're more entrepreneurial, whereas being hyper specific means that you're more hireable. And so, as it pertains to like AI, it's like, okay, well, if you have within a year, you're only going to make 3 projects, right? And with AI, you can turn it from making 3 projects a year to making a project a month, or making a
Wow.
project every other month, right? Because you could utilize a lot of the AI assistive tools to fill in the gaps that you need to complete the projects, right? Because each project requires different things, right? It requires code, it requires 3D models or 2D assets, it requires design elements, it requires a story, or it requires all those different things, and you don't have to teach yourself all those things in order to pursue those ideas, right? And or or you could utilize AI to fill in those gaps so that you could show how well you could do in those hyper specific things, right? Where if you only want to work on like game logic, right, then you could utilize the asset store, and you could utilize all those things to show how the game logic works. And then you could just continue to just work on different asset, like different systems within like a game world, and you don't have to worry about making all 3. You just just fill in the gaps with other assets that are made, right? And so if I were to tell anybody that's learning right now, try to stay up on the tools, but at the end of the day, you are only as valuable to other entities that are looking for help based off of the work that you do. And so if and then how well you can articulate that, right? And so if you know how to communicate, and you have a lot of stuff that you worked on, and I could use my work as an example, right? Like, people know of Eyelnd Feevr because I make a lot of stuff, right? Like the project is very expansive. It incorporates animation, incorporates AI, it incorporates, design, and, toy production, all these different things. And I always tell people that Eyelnd Feevr is just a portfolio piece that like has taken on a life.
Yeah, it's like you want to show a piece of chair and you build an entire IKEA. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah. It,
how I would
yeah, it's
describe.
it's and it's like because I'm a generalist, tried and true, right? Like, I have so many interests, and so I will get projects based off of just the work that I do with Eyelnd Feevr that speaks to the stuff that I did with Eyelnd Feevr. They'll look
Mm,
at the stuff that I did, and then they will hire me to just make that stuff for them. And so if you don't have a project or a portfolio, if you don't have that to show, then like you just won't, like, those opportunities won't, like, you kind of have to do what everybody else does, which is, you know, like, have a resume and have a
yeah.
portfolio and have all that stuff. But if you just make stuff that people like and it inspires them to pursue their ideas, they will probably reach out to you to help you pursue their ideas. And that's just being hireable, right? It just,
Mm,
it requires you to put a lot of upfront time and effort into it. And if
yeah.
you're a student, I mean, you got nothing else to do anyway. So like you might as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so as for a student right now, like right now, I recently joined Kenyatta College, and also like they are kind of start adding like XR programs.
Mhm.
And as for example, like you are teaching in your college, what do you see that interaction tracks or like a because right now the name of the school curriculum is very diverse, but it's almost like in art department, they have art,
Yeah.
interaction, and multimedia. And what do you see those types of class and intersect with the science department or yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they would like intersect with like the science departments just because like each class I think focuses on a specific skill that you would learn, right? And so I think that on top of those classes you would need to have support classes that are more interdisciplinary in nature that really allows people to explore those intersections, right? And so if you're taking a physics class and then you're taking a intro to Blender class, right? Then after you take both of those classes, there should be a class that allows you to explore you know, physics within, digital spaces, right? And so you already understand the physics, you already understand the blender. So now you have a class that helps you solidify the connections between, the physics principles and the concepts of utilizing a 3D software. But that's a completely separate class. I could see those things happening where it's more interdisciplinary and the intention is for it to be more interdisciplinary because I think when people will have all these experiences and the skills of like they know blender like the back of their hand, they know cinema 4D, they know maya, they know how to 3D model and weight paint and all that stuff, but they get out into the workforce and they have no ideas to pursue, right? Like they just don't know how to navigate the core, the core foundation of like what makes people successful. And it's really just the exploration of the ideas with those tools, right? The ideas will always be there, but the tools will change. And you could skill up on any tool as a professional. Like that, you have to do that. But if you don't have any ideas to explore, if you don't make any cool stuff and the ideas that you make suck, you're not going to go very far. Like it just like that's just what it is because everything at the end of the day is, just sort of a entertainment or education adjacent, right? Like it's all about, compelling people to utilize the stuff you make to occupy their time and their energy. And so if you come up with something that people rain, sleet, or snow, at any time of the day, they will want to interact with your stuff because it helps them, it's a great idea, then like, you'll write your ticket and you'll be able to improve on the things that you need to improve on by virtue of that. Right. And case in point, me and Eyelnd Feevr, right? People like it. And so therefore I continue to improve on it. Continue to skill up. I continue to do all these things because people enjoy the project in and of itself. And so for students, it's like, in educational institutions and stuff like that, it like, yeah, the skills are there, but like in America at least, like your power is being able to navigate these ideas with the technology. And when the ideas become so vast and expansive, then you could hire people to help you pursue that idea. And I mean, what that translates to is you essentially being an entrepreneur and you being a business owner, you hiring people to help with your ideas, right? And so, because that's when you get hired on a project, that's pretty much what they're doing. That's what they're doing already. Is they have an idea, they want to pursue it. When they need help, they would hire you. It's they're not too different. Just the scale of those things are is just the variation, the scale.
Yeah, and yeah, just summarize it. It means that um, ideas is more important than whatever tools you are using, but AI can really reduce your time to spend on a project. And once your idea grow bigger and bigger, and you can pretty much hire somebody to work for you. And your project, unique ID, unique IP also can help you to get hired, to get paid for working on some projects. So yeah, so talk about your Eyelnd Feevr. What's the next? Like, what do you up to for your projects?
Yeah. So with Island Fever, I think there's a couple of milestones that I've like always wanted to do with the project. And so to just sort of like give people a better, like a brief understanding of what the project is. Like Island Fever is just a web comic. I started a web comic like 10 years ago. It's gone through multiple iterations. But it's a web comic tried and true. And it explores the experience of the main character and how he navigates the world and trying to like find his place in the world, right? And so it's kind of like a coming of age story. It parallels a lot of the experiences that I've had when I was going from being a student athlete to not being a student athlete to trying to be a freelance artist to finally getting into medicine, and now I'm sort of exploring that intersection. A lot of that experience that I had was really just like trying to find what my purpose is, and I think that's just something that a lot of people can just relate to because everybody's always going through it, right? Like we're always going through something, and we want to find a place where we belong. And so through that, I the core concept of the story and the world that I built is built on exploration, like exploring the world around you, exploring, the ideas that you have, literally just exploration. And so when I was introduced to AR and VR, to me that is just, that's the whole concept of those technologies is to create more engaging things for people to explore. You give people more agency within the worlds that you create, and you pretty much give people the camera and let them film what they want to see based off of what you built, right? Like that's how I see it. And so with it, it sort of lends me to take stuff that I would normally usually put just in a book and be able to take it outside of just the pages of that and place that into the world that you have, right? And place that onto, different objects that you have, right? So last year I came out with like, a series of books. I designed a headset for people to have like a hands-free experience. And then I also came out with like some augmented reality like stuffed animals, which were like really, really fun. I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. And so this year, some of the things that I wanted to do is take like release a hardcover, like a hardcover like coffee table book. And the purpose of that is to take an animated show and place that literally within the book. And so people can have a traditional sort of like coffee table book experience, but also have a lot of content to pull from, so that it just occupies your time when you want it to. So if you don't want to read it, you can watch it just like a regular book, but have that experience. And then getting into like packaging, like augmented rib, like enabled packaging, uh, so that I could create things that people often would like throw away and turn those into collector's items and objects that people find value in outside of just like housing the things, right? So if you get a keychain from me, it's going to come in a package that is augmented reality enabled, and you're probably only going to buy one of those keychains, and if you do, uh the the package will be a very just as valuable as the keychain itself because it has an experience associated with it. And so, getting into packaging, getting into I just designed a like augmented reality backpack. And so, providing opportunities for people to have AR experiences that are more integrated into our daily lives, right? You're bored and you just want to just like kill some time and like play around with something for, 5 minutes or whatever. Well, you could play around with the AR backpack, and you could press the button, have it come to life, and have explosions, and take pictures with it and stuff like that. And making and still sort of like having that be related to the characters and the worlds that you have. to where to where the story and the main characters they're a part of your life in these nuanced ways that and so being able to create these experiences with the intellectual property that I have, but then integrate those into people's lives in a way that's just fun and novel. I think I'm at the point now where I can do that, and when people see it, it makes sense, and people aren't really questioning like, oh yeah, why would you do this, blah blah blah. It's like, well, these kids like it and they keep using it, and maybe I'll make another one, and stuff like that. So it's a I would say the idea, because it's intellectual property, the ideas of Eyelnd Feevr expanding to have just a large product catalog that people that encourages people to make a purchase. Obviously I want to make more purchases. I want people to buy the stuff, but also having stuff that like just resonates with people in a way that makes them feel good, and that makes me feel good.
Yeah, and I saw before I remember you were trying to push the Island Fever into the TV show. And I think Netflix is I saw a lot of like independent movies and or like some shows on Netflix. And I saw like a Netflix right now having some games, even though it's beta mode, but it's very unique compared with the mainstream, like a shooting zombies, those types of
Yeah.
games. It's like a storytelling base, but sometimes it's so hard to figure it out how to do it, and it took
Yeah.
me too long to go to the next story or next cutscene. So I was like, gave up. But according to what your plan, are you planning to launch your new shows on the TV show or Netflix or even some like Netflix games? I don't know. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I would say, because I'm an animator, tried and true, right? Like, I still a lot of the stuff that I do in the XR space is just an extension of like what I would normally do for like an animated project in general. I think the difference between my XR stuff and like my traditional animated stuff is that instead of exporting it out in Premiere Pro, I'll just export it out in Unity, right? Like that's
Oh.
literally the difference, right? Still utilize the same tools. And so like with that, um if I don't get option for a show or whatever, because like that's sort of as an animator, like that is the pinnacle, right? I want to get a TV deal, I want to have a show on TV, like I've made it, right? Like that's I like I still want that. If I get a Netflix deal, like it's over everybody, right? Like it's over, right? But if that doesn't come, then the alternative is just taking the stuff that I would normally put on Netflix and then just putting that in a book. And that's by virtue of doing what I'm already doing now, just like a larger scale, where I'm taking I'm taking the animated stuff, I'm creating a comic from it, and then within that comic is pretty much the animated show.
Mhm.
And so, using image tracking and utilizing, the animation tools that are ever present in real-time rendering, and being able to create an immersive experience that allows you to watch your book. And or I could do some more spatial design stuff and just create, markerless AR experiences that are just, placing you inside the scenes of the animated experiences from Eyelnd Feevr. And so I think there's definitely a lot of options within XR to explore that aside from just like being on a screen, or being on a TV screen by virtue of Netflix. And I think depending on what storyline I choose to explore, I have a lot to work with essentially, and I think that for me is like really empowering, and it just and it helps me balance out the stressful life that I have as a healthcare professional. So like I'm curious to see what the future holds. But regardless, I'm gonna do something.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you so much, Stephen, to join us for today's podcast. And if you are interested in connecting with Stephen, our page, our LinkedIn Live page has all the Stephen's social media, and feel free to connect with Stephen if you have any follow-up questions, or you wanna kind of have more questions for Stephen, or some interesting stuff you wanna share with Stephen. Thank you so much, Stephen. And yeah, and we will finish our podcast. And thank you everybody to tuning in today. Thank you so much.
Oh
Bye
yeah,
bye.
yeah. Thanks for having me.
Bye bye.